Assetto Corsa COMPETIZIONE is a GT3 and GT4 simulazione with ABS and the traction control. You don't need a very big cojones.
Hey everybody, my apologies for the intro. I know you will suffer for the rest of your life. I'm sorry. Some consolidation here is though my first take of this video with excellent driving, on-point commentary, very few like silences. Really went well, other than the webcam decided to record absolutely nothing, so I'm sort of suffering a little bit. Perhaps that is some consolidation to you, probably not. Today it's Assetto Corsa Competizione time. We'll do some laps in the Lamborghini at Barcelona, which is a track I've done in a combination with the car in AMS. So that's why I chose this combination. I did drive the GTR Nissan as well. It drives it differently, of course. Only drove it briefly, but did get a brief taste of the front engine sort of feel. This is of course mid-engined. Let's just go over a couple of things before we drive. Out of the box it all worked quite well, and there's even triple screen support, which I didn't know they added, but well, they did, that's pretty cool. Works well too. Frame rate is important. I drove a lot of laps with 60 FPS and felt more detached than I wanted to, and there are some reasons in the physics as well that we'll get to. But then I lowered the detail so I could cap the frame rate at 120, and that really reduced the detail. In fact, I'm gonna insert a little clip here of me wobbling the wheel at 60 and at 120 FPS, so you can just see the difference. I don't know if that's because of the Unreal Engine, or just that it's not uncommon for frame rate to be important for reduced input lag, but here it's quite big. I did all the things like full screen, no VSync, pre-rendered frames as low as it will go. There's even an ultra low latency mode that does probably nothing in the NVIDIA drivers. And somebody on a forum said they had to add a line to the system or config ini somewhere deep in the Assetto Corsa files. I don't think anything did anything, but it's quite frame rate sensitive. Perhaps it's just the multi-threaded nature of the Unreal Engine, that it's always a frame of extra lag or something, but anyway. Since it all runs almost consistently at 120 FPS now, input is less delayed and I have a better connection with the car. Does mean my CPU is getting a big old workout and can barely keep up while recording as well. And my new graphics card is also taxed. So yeah, it's fairly heavy on the resources, but it looks and sounds pretty good as well. So that's nice. One big thing I changed, if you look at like the options for adjusting the view and stuff. One thing is always missed in AC and also in ACC, there is no proper like lock to horizon is what it's called. It's a feature that's in there, but it locks the camera completely to the horizon for roll and for pitch, which is the dumbest thing. I'm sorry, I just don't understand why you would want that. So if you go through Eau Rouge, you don't really look up the hill, you sort of look into the mountain. It's very strange, and what the view options don't have is a pitch control. So when the car goes over bumps like that, the camera points up and down a lot, and that's why you see a lot of view shaking. Especially with triple screen, there's a small field of view for one monitor anyway, and that's a very sort of disruptive effect. And you can adjust this in most games quite properly now. In AMS we have it, iRacing does it quite well. And here it's just not possible. However, there's the Real Head Motion plugin that works perfectly. So I installed that and now it sort of has pitch control of the camera. This is really nice. Oh, and while standing here, my tires have gone very low pressure. All right, well, we'll warm those up. So that fixed the view.
Tire pressure. Stay clear of the curbs.
Makes it a lot easier to see where you're going without the bounciness. So I hope they add that feature to the vanilla installation, because it's a little odd having to install a utility for something that's quite logical to do. Because your head is not bolted to the car, and you probably filter out some of the bumps Now, I'm not saying it's gonna be super stable, but for a sim anyway, it's very nice to have the view not bounce up and down so much. So otherwise, audio, visual, it's all very solid. No complaints there. Of course, it's about the physics. And GT3 cars, of course, ABS traction control. Now, I'm not really a fan of the idea of having driving aids. At the same time though, they don't take away from the talent that is required to drive a racing car. The fact that your tires cannot lock up or spin up during braking and exit of the corner is nice, but there's a lot of subtlety that you need to apply as a driver to get the most out of the car. So there are safety nets, sort of, and if you're a terrible driver, you will be less terrible with these safety nets. But if you're a good driver, well, on brakes it will definitely help, because you have the certainty of not locking. That helps a lot. But what's still important is getting off the pedal smoothly. That's very important, and that's something that ABS doesn't help you with. In fact, it can also make it a little harder, because I wasn't used to ABS, and it's very easy to press too hard because you calibrate your pedal, in my case around 60 kilos, and with ABS you don't get feedback of like smoke in the mirrors and tire noises when you press too hard and the tire locks up. So you can press beyond the value that you've calibrated on a load cell pedal anyway. And you have to stop doing that, because if you then release the brake because you want to turn in, the first bit that you release is the excess of force that you shouldn't have applied anyway. So perhaps you calibrate 60 kilos, and with ABS you don't get the feedback, so you press 80 kilos and then you release 80 to 60, but the game always sees 100% brake, right? So I really had to get a feel and the muscle memory for braking to know where 100% braking input is. So the moment I release the pedal, I actually release braking instead of just the excess. Another small thing with the brakes, the excellent thing about ACC is that it does telemetry. It's built in, so you can look at Motec and pretend to be an engineer. And I also saw that at the end of the straight, when applying 100% braking, the ABS signal wasn't on. Only at lower speed did the ABS seem to kick in, and that would suggest to me that the brakes are a little underpowered, because my assumption, you know, hey, I'm not the expert at all, but my assumption would be that the brake system is strong enough to lock the tires even at high speed. It takes a lot of pedal force, but it should be doable. Yet here with 100% pedal input, so you're pressing as hard as you can, and the car setup has 100% braking force. It was not using ABS, only at low speed, so that would indicate that the brakes are just a little too weak at 100% pedal input. And another thing there, I do have telemetry data of the real car at this track, and the peak G-forces under braking were higher in the real car than in what I can achieve in ACC. So perhaps the brakes are a little on the weak side. But other than that, with ABS, yeah, like I said, you really have to still be smooth off the brakes, especially with a mid-engined car like this. The way you come off the brake and enter a turn is highly important in keeping the balance of the car nicely. And one last thing about the brakes, since they are slightly underpowered, it seems, what I find myself doing, and what I see people in hot laps doing as well, is downshift as early as you can, and then use as much engine braking as you can. So you really have to get a feel for at what speed you can downshift, so you get the highest revs in the lower gear to help you slow down. That's not something you tend to see as much in the real videos. But that's just something I noticed. And about the real cars, if you look at the videos, there's a pretty good video of a lap 43.5, which is about the same time that I can do when I'm not talking. They tend to take a gear higher in corners, so this coming corner they do in 4th, and I feel more comfortable in a lower gear. And there are a couple more places where that happens. So the reason for that is I have the hardest time controlling the lift-off corner entry oversteer, and being a gear lower tends to somehow feel a bit more secure. It's very easy. I've done quite a few laps now, so I wouldn't say I'm good, but at least I'm, ouch, yeah, somewhat experienced. But let's see if we can provoke the issue I have, and especially had in the past. So I would tend to enter the corners at quite a high speed off throttle. And now it won't happen because I'm so good. It will definitely happen, just doesn't happen well when I ask for it. And it also was very much worse with 60 FPS. So here I take second, yeah. In the real car they take third. And you saw there was a sort of a slide that took a while. And I was sort of giving it a burst of opposite lock, and the car didn't react quite as directly. And if you look at the onboards of the real car, and this is very hard to judge because I'm not the real driver and I'm just looking at a video, they make plenty of corrections, but it also seems that those corrections are having an instant effect on the car, as you would kind of expect. But then again, who am I? You know, I do know a couple of things about vehicle dynamics and racing cars, more than most YouTubers, but still my talent is limited. And when you do physics and racing sims, at some point you realize that I've learned a bit, but that only means I see all the things I don't understand yet, right? So people who are very confident in describing a simulator and what's real and what isn't real, I would take that all with a very big bucket of salt. So it's subjective and just opinions, and by no means gospel. But it seems like the moments they have in the real car and the corrections they apply instantly affect stabilize the car, for example. And here it's not hard to control the slide, which is great because, you know, compared to something like iRacing, this felt so much better, and I can attack so much better than iRacing, for example. And it's not like it's no big deal when you have a slide. It's not difficult to control, but there is of course a difference in can you slide and how can you slide. It was a pretty long slide, and that's the thing, they tend to be quite long, and what you do mid-slide, you know, I'm sort of sawing at the wheel, not really sure what the car's doing and when it will snap back, or will it snap back. How much opposite lock should I apply? Of course I'm being silly there because I'm really provoking it with silly driving, but I often get it on corner entry when I'm a little bit too enthusiastic. The back sort of comes and I'm just left uncertain with how to do with my inputs so that I lose the least amount of time. So yeah, I can slide and I won't crash. That's great. But I'm not in such direct control as I think is possible. And I think going by the onboards of the real thing, it seems to be a little bit more direct. And here the slides sort of occur slowly, take quite some time, and what you do during the slide doesn't seem to affect it as directly. Now, I'm not driving well, I realize that. Let's see if I can speed it up a little bit and see if we can encounter some of the same things, but while not driving like an idiot. Oh, crunch. Also, yeah, thank you, very bad lap. My tire pressures are lower with a higher frame rate. I think I'm just better at driving and less unnecessary sliding, better inputs. They take third gear here in real life. I tend to find it more stable to use second. Oh, that's late. There I was also guessing what to do with the slide. It feels really detached. Oh, that's my own mistake. What's also important for the feel is, of course, the force feedback. Oh, see, a very sort of slowly progressing slide into that corner there. That's my typical problem. And force feedback is kind of okay. You feel the road surface and stuff, that's fine. But here I'm sort of left guessing what to do there with the opposite lock. Thing is though, I've said before that perhaps in Automobilista the force feedback is too direct and too precise and unrealistically good, which is not realistic. So I don't know if this might actually be more accurate and you are just more on your own with feeling the slides and stuff. And there's of course the possible debate in sim racing where the force feedback should give you information that is not real. The weird thing is in AMS Yeah, as early downshift as possible. In AMS we don't do anything fake. Yet in most sims the FFB is a bit more spongy and less responsive. But in the slides it doesn't help that the FFB is also not really sort of making you snap to the opposite lock and center. But I wouldn't say it's bad. And they might be related. The sluggishness of the sliding of the car might also cause sort of the sluggishness in the force feedback in those cases. You do feel it's getting ever so slightly lighter when you get understeer. You get a little bit of vibration. And with the corner entry oversteer that I talked about, there's also some effect sometimes when getting on the power, especially with lower traction control settings, that if you get a little sideways, it really stops the acceleration. The force, the traction control steps in and you sort of really bog down. And I think one way to drive these cars, and I think I'm subconsciously doing it a little less bad than I used to, is to drive a bit more pointy. So slow down more in a straight line, a bit less trail braking, because a lot of trail braking can also get you that oversteer into the corners. And then straight line the exits, so the traction control doesn't have to interfere when you have a good exit. Oh, it's very easy here to get understeer, and a cut track is very close by. I have that in this car, that corner exit there, and also I'll point to it when we get there. And you can get off tracks with a bit of corner exit understeer very easily. Of course, I mean, you shouldn't be there. I'm not saying that the off tracks aren't good, but yeah. I'm driving like an absolute muppet here, this corner exit here. When you pick up some understeer, it's very easy to get a little too wide there and get an off track and invalid lap. Here it's sort of, ooh, I'm carrying a lot of speed into the corner. I hear the sound of the tires increasing as if they are starting to slide, but I'm not sure if, when and how much to apply. So I think that's my main gripe. It's how you control the slide. Yeah, you can slide, but it's hard to make it part of an absolute quick and controlled lap because they take a bit long. And they're a bit vague to control. I don't know if this has anything to do with it or if ACC still has it, but AC, I have it from reasonably reliable sources, added a lot of rolling resistance with slip angle. So if you're sliding a bit sideways, it would add tire rolling resistance. Effectively sort of a slow down drag. And there is no data for this at all that I've seen, other than some misleading data where it appears that this happens, but if you look closely at the data, it actually describes another effect. So That what made like the cars easier to sort of stable in drifting in AC. And perhaps that can explain some of the bogging down when you use traction control on corner exit and you get a bit of a slide, as if there is rolling resistance. Well, it had to happen, didn't it? Rolling resistance being added, but I don't know if that's true. I'm just looking for explanations on why sometimes it feels so a little sluggish. But let's not be too negative. Especially with 120 FPS, a lot of what I'm complaining about is just down to the guy in the seat. And it's your skill that enables you to drive around some of these issues. But I'll post a link to a couple of videos of the real car and you can see how aggressively it's driven. See, oh, it's on a long slide. Completely caused by myself. And that understeer. Anyway, I will shut up and try to do a couple of good laps. I'm afraid the previous video was a lot better, except for the fact that no video got recorded. I'm sorry. I don't quite have the sharpness. So here's another little gripe before hopefully a very quick lap, and then some concluding thoughts, which are very positive, actually quite positive indeed. But you know, it's not me if I don't gripe a little bit more. Torque throttle response is always on my mind, right? Because we worked on that with AMS and it's odd and wrong in so many sims, to the point where I think that in some cars in AMS it's better, but people don't like it because they haven't, you know, they're not used to it because of 10 or 12 years of sim racing. They haven't experienced it. Very constant throttle. It goes up slowly and then quicker with a constant throttle. It looks like even when you're part throttle, it just follows a scale model, a scaled down version of the torque curve. I cannot be sure, and perhaps it's actually how it's modeled, because of course the ECU, you can program the engine to do anything that you want, but it's weird that it would get more torque at such low throttle positions. It will get more torque and speed up with higher revs. That's just very unlikely. It's in a way not that important because this, well, my tires are deflating, is of course a car with traction control.
Stay clear of the curbs.
But the way the torque comes in as you apply the throttle out of a corner is still just like ABS. Okay, you cannot lock the tires, but you still have to be smooth with the pedal. And it makes it a little harder when the throttle is modeled like this to be smooth out of a corner, because you need a lot of throttle. I'm almost half throttle now. Let's do 6th gear. I'm half throttle. Let's get beyond the 3000 RPM. So I need half throttle to do 105 kilometers an hour in 6th gear. That is very unlikely at this RPM. Half throttle is effectively full throttle. So that's just something to keep in mind, where I don't think that's realistic, but perhaps they got all the ECU data from the manufacturer and it's actually perfect. Perhaps you're thinking, Niels, what about car setup? Of course that affects the handling. Probably. I did make some changes, but somehow when I change the car setup, whatever I do, I make it more oversteery. So it didn't really have the effect. Plus when you're new to a sim, where obviously I'm the weak link, it's more worthwhile spending time driving than attempting to fix the car setup. There's one little thing there that I've noticed because of the Motec data that it generates. That there is some wheel speed difference between the rear driven wheels. Even on corner exit there's a little speed difference sometimes in the rear wheels. And typically you don't see that a lot. Now for this car I did have telemetry data, but not the wheel speed sadly, so I cannot check my data. But again, just sort of formulating like an idea of what might go on, but I'm not sure. Is that the differential lock isn't quite there. Now on power that's fine, but off throttle with an open diff, off throttle turn in will be a lot more harsh than a lot of these GT cars have a lot of diff lock, as far as I'm aware anyway, to stabilize them. And it almost seems like there was about a 5% wheel speed difference here in when turning in. And well, like I said, I don't have the data, sadly. Those channels were missing on the telemetry that I got from this car, so I don't know how the diff is doing and how the wheel speed difference would be. So the main conclusion still is it's a lot to do with how you drive and how you enter those corners. But hey, I wouldn't be a race driver if I wasn't looking for an excuse. And also, part of the reason why some of these slides are a little big, I mean, if you feel them late, the slide will be bigger. So I think it's more developing a sense for when they will happen and how they will happen. And that will improve your detection of the slide, and you will correct it sooner before they have a chance to grow big. So I think that's a big part of what we see. What I complain about is just I lack that sense to pick up the slide almost before it happens. And I don't really have a ACC database yet with what to do in what situation. And well, with all the stuff that I did yesterday and today, I think I have 5-6 hours in it now, so it's getting better, but I'm still a rookie. Yeah, 435, not great. Still not good.
Well done, mate. That's not fast as that.
Well, lap 69. What is there to do but end it? It's always sort of the same. There is potential, but getting it out. So at the end, 43.3. It is a personal best, but you feel there are a couple of tenths in there. I think a 42 is in there, but how can you get a sore throat where you're not even talking? Anyway, guys, let's sum up Assetto Corsa. Well, first of all, it's very hard to sum it up. It's only one car, one track that I properly did. The fact that I'm doing 69 laps says quite a lot. It is challenging, entertaining. You want to keep doing laps, and you know, it's a desire to find the sense of what the car wants you to do. It's also still a little bit frustrating when the slides, what I talked about, how they are a bit hard to sense. Force feedback doesn't really help you sense them. Now, this might be perfectly realistic, I don't know. But it does make it hard, and for my skill a bit frustrating at times. So, yeah, fairly positive. Looking forward to trying some R Factor 2, see how the GT cars drive there. But this is pretty good. And as I keep repeating, my opinion is just an opinion, and even though, yes, I do think I know more than lots of sim racers on YouTube because it's my job to do physics and stuff like that, even at that point, my opinion, my driving skill, what is realistic, you know, it is very difficult to say. And when I say it is a little tricky to judge the slides, perhaps that's more realistic than, say, AMS, where the force feedback is almost telepathic and does all the things for you. When you have a moment here, you lose a lot of time, and sometimes in other sims perhaps you have pretty big moments that result in the quickest lap. So perhaps that's real, perhaps this is real, perhaps somewhere in between is real. As usual, I don't really know. But I think this is a good sim, one that urges you to try harder and be smoother and do better. I really want that 42, but it's just not really happening. So that's a look at ACC. I think RF2 next. I hope you enjoyed this. Take the criticism with a pinch of salt, it's just an opinion. Overall, I'm pretty positive about the sim. Alright guys, catch you later. Bye bye.